It started on a rainy Tuesday. I was fixing the broken mailbox outside our apartment complex, not because it was mine, but because it bothered me seeing it hang there, tilted like a broken promise. That's when I heard her heels clicking on the wet pavement. Slow, deliberate, like thunder before the storm. I looked up, and there she was. Mrs. Arden. Unit 4C. Elegant, mid-40s, with this air of authority that made you straighten your back without even realizing it. Her hair was tied up in this perfect twist, not a single strand out of place. She wore a beige trench coat, collar turned up, and her eyes, God, her eyes, cool and unreadable, like she was always doing the math in her head. She paused, looked at the mailbox I was holding with one hand and a screwdriver in the other. "You planning to rob it?" she asked, lips tugging into the ghost of a smirk. I laughed, awkwardly. Just tired of seeing it lean like it's been drinking. She didn't laugh, but her expression softened. Just for a second. "Well, thank you for fixing it. No one ever bothers. Most people don't notice. That's because most people aren't watching the right things." Something about the way she said it, soft, low, deliberate, stuck with me long after she walked past. Over the next few weeks, I started seeing her more. In the hallway, waiting for the elevator, collecting mail late at night. She always had this air of distance, like she existed on a different level than the rest of us. But sometimes she'd look at me like I wasn't invisible. Once, I was carrying groceries up the stairs because the elevator was broken. She appeared out of nowhere, took a bag from my hand without asking, and walked beside me. "You're sweating." "That's not attractive," she said. "It's 3 flights of stairs. I'm human." "Are you?" she asked, and smiled, just barely. There was heat in that moment. I felt it. She did too. But neither of us said anything. Not yet. The real shift came the night the power went out. I was heading back from the gym, shirt damp from the rain. She stood in the dim hallway light, holding a flashlight and a half-empty glass of red wine. "Do you know anything about fuse boxes?" she asked. "No," I replied. "But I know a lot about pretending I do." She laughed, genuinely, this time. First real laugh I'd heard from her. I followed her into her apartment. Everything smelled like jasmine and old books. Her husband wasn't home, she didn't say it, but the empty silence spoke for her. I fixed nothing that night. Not the fuse. Not her loneliness. But something changed. A silence passed between us that wasn't empty anymore. When I got up to leave, she walked me to the door. And as I reached for the handle, she said, "You know, you're nothing like the boys your age." I turned slowly, heartbeat stumbling. "What am I, then?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just looked at me, really looked. And then she brushed a hand across my shoulder. Just fingertips. Barely there. But it stayed with me. I shouldn't have come back. But 2 nights later, I was standing in front of her door again, holding a roll of electrical tape and some excuse about fixing her hallway light, the one that had been flickering since forever. She hadn't asked. I hadn't offered. But something in me wanted to be near her again. She opened the door in a silk robe. Deep navy blue, the kind that clings to the skin like second thoughts. Her hair was down this time. Soft. Unprotected. "You again," she said. The light's still broken, I mumbled. And you're still pretending you know how to fix it. She stepped aside, letting me in. The place felt warmer tonight. Or maybe I did. As I pretended to inspect the fixture, I caught glimpses of her reflection in the mirror above the console table. She poured herself another glass of wine. Didn't offer me one. Didn't need to. Every sound, the clink of the bottle, the soft pad of her bare feet on the floor, echoed louder than it should have. She stood behind me, too close. I could feel the warmth from her skin before she said a word. You know. I wasn't always like this. I paused, screwdriver frozen mid-turn. Like what? Lonely, she whispered. I turned slowly, meeting her eyes. She wasn't looking at me, not really. She was looking past me. Somewhere old, somewhere broken. He used to notice things, she said, voice low. Used to ask how I was, how my day went. Now he just shows up in photos. I didn't know what to say. I was 20. I'd never been married, never lived in the kind of silence she described. But I understood the look in her eyes, that quiet ache of being seen by everyone, but known by no one. She sat on the edge of the couch, robe folding around her legs. I joined her, barely letting our knees touch. Her perfume, jasmine again, made the air thick. The lights from the hallway spilled in through the slightly open door, casting soft shadows over her collarbone. I should have left. But I noticed her hand. It trembled slightly when she reached for the remote. I noticed her ring, still there. I noticed that I wasn't breathing right. You're quiet tonight, she said. Just listening, I replied. To what? To what you're not saying. She looked at me then, really looked. Then, without a word, she reached out and touched my arm. A light graze, barely there. But deliberate. Intentional. You don't have to go just yet, she said, voice almost a whisper. I swallowed hard. Every nerve in my body tightened like a wire. I opened my mouth to say something, something honest, something reckless, but stopped myself. The moment stretched. And just when I thought the tension would break, she smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile that made you feel safe. It was the kind that changed everything. I should have left the moment she touched me. But instead, I stayed. She poured me a glass of wine, red this time, and sat across from me on the floor like we were teenagers, legs crossed, shoulders hunched forward, eyes low. You remind me of someone I used to know, she said. Who? Me, back when I felt alive. I didn't know what to say. So I sipped the wine, though I didn't really want it. The room smelled like jasmine and regret. She leaned her head against the couch, robe falling slightly off one shoulder. Smooth skin, soft freckles. I looked away. But not fast enough. You always do that, she said. Do what? Look at me like you shouldn't, and then pretend you weren't. I felt my chest tighten. It's not like that. Isn't it? She asked. Because I see the way you hesitate. Like you're waiting for permission to feel something. She wasn't wrong. And that scared me. I stood up quickly, heart racing, setting the wine down with a dull thud. I needed to pull back. This was spiraling. I should go. She didn't stop me. But she didn't move either. Just stared up at me, vulnerable, and terrifyingly beautiful in the kind of way that made every sensible part of me shut down. Then came the knock. Not loud, but urgent. 3 short raps on the door, like whoever was out there knew something was wrong. She flinched. Just slightly. But I saw it. She stood and walked to the door, slowly, tying her robe tighter. "Don't say anything," she whispered without turning back. The door opened just enough to show a man's voice, older, rough. "Thought I'd stop by. Your phone's off." "Battery died," she replied calmly. "Whose car is out front?" She hesitated. "Just a beat. My brother's. He came to fix the light." Brother. That word hit harder than it should've. I moved toward the hallway, half hoping he'd push the door open, see me standing there like a kid caught stealing something he didn't even know he wanted. But he didn't. After a few quiet murmurs, the door closed again. Lock clicked. She leaned against it, breathing out. "You okay?" I asked. She looked at me like she couldn't tell if I was a mistake or a lifeline. "You should probably go," she said. I nodded. But I didn't move. Not until she walked over and stood in front of me, close enough for her perfume to flood every sense I had left. "You can still pretend this didn't happen," she said. "And if I don't want to pretend?" She didn't answer. Just reached out, and with the softest touch, fixed the collar of my shirt. Her fingers lingered longer than they should have. The silence between us changed. It wasn't tension anymore. It was choice. And we were one breath away from crossing it. I should have walked out that door when she told me to. But I didn't. I stood there, staring at her hand still touching my shirt, as if we were both too afraid to let the moment pass. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was thick, heavy, trembling with everything we hadn't said. And then she whispered it. Just loud enough for me to hear. "I can't keep pretending this doesn't mean something." My heart jolted. She turned away, like the weight of her own honesty scared her. Walked to the window, pulling the sheer curtain aside. City lights flickered behind her like 1,000 quiet witnesses. I stayed frozen near the door. "Do you ever feel like you're sleepwalking through your own life?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Lately, yeah. I used to be wild," she said, half laughing. "Before him. Before marriage turned into silence and errands and being told to smile when I didn't feel like it." I took a step forward. "Just one." "I see you," I said quietly. "Not the version you show everyone else." She turned slowly. And for the first time, I didn't look away. "You shouldn't say things like that," she said. "Why not?" "Because I'll believe you." My throat tightened. I wanted to say more, to tell her how I memorized the way she touched her wrist when she was nervous, how her laugh didn't come out much, but when it did, it shook something in me I didn't know was breakable. Instead, I said nothing. Just stood there in the soft light of a stranger's living room, feeling like I'd stepped into someone else's life. She took a step toward me. Then another. And then she was standing in front of me again, closer this time. No excuses. No whine. No pretending we were just having a nice conversation between two adults who knew better. "You don't even know what you want," she whispered. "I do," I said. "It's just not supposed to be you." That broke something in her face. She looked at me, really looked, like she was trying to memorize every inch of my hesitation. "So what happens now?" she asked. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. I was 22. She was 41. I shouldn't have been there. Not with her. Not this close. Not in this silence that screamed louder than any argument ever could. But I also couldn't move. Not when her hand grazed mine. Not when our fingers almost laced. That almost was louder than anything we'd said. And then, she whispered a question that shattered the last bit of distance. "If I asked you to stay tonight, would you?" I didn't speak. I just looked at her. And in that loaded silence, everything we'd buried finally reached the surface. I don't remember walking to the hotel. I just remember the heat of her hand in mine, the way she looked at me, like she didn't care anymore who saw or what came after. Her eyes had stopped asking for permission. She had already chosen. And I had already followed. The streetlights blurred past in streaks, like we were speeding toward something we both knew we couldn't take back. And yet, it felt right. Like everything unspoken between us had finally found its voice. We stepped into the lobby, polished, warm, quiet. The front desk was empty. She squeezed my hand. "Let me check us in," she said, with that soft, playful smile that never reached her eyes. I stood behind her, heart racing. She rang the little silver bell on the counter. And then he stepped out. My breath left me. Her hand slipped from mine. He wore a name tag that read Michael, and he looked right at me, into me, like he already knew. But his face didn't move. No shock. No anger. Just silence. "Room for two?" he asked, calm, like this was any other night. She froze. My mouth opened, nothing came out. "Michael," she whispered, breathless. "You're not supposed to be on tonight." "Surprise," he said. "Shift switch. Emergency. You know how hotels are." The room felt colder than it should have. She tried to smile, but her hands were shaking. I saw it. "This is my friend's son," she said. "He helped me with the sink earlier and now he's helping you check into a hotel." Michael's tone was soft, almost amused. "That's thoughtful." He looked at me again. "You didn't know?" he asked me gently. "She didn't tell you?" I blinked. "Tell me, what?" He leaned slightly forward, voice low, careful. "She's not just my wife," he said. "She's my business partner. We own this hotel together." I took a step back. She grabbed my arm. "I didn't plan this," she whispered. "I swear to God, it just happened." Michael didn't look angry. That was worse. He just looked tired. Defeated. "You don't need to explain," he said. "Not to me. You already made your choice." She opened her mouth, eyes brimming, but the words wouldn't come. And then he turned to me. "Do you love her?" he asked. That question hit harder than anything else that night. Not "what are you doing with my wife?" Not "how could you?" Not even "leave." Just that. "Do you love her?" I didn't know what to say. Because even if I did, what right did I have? In that moment, the weight of it all hit me. The secrecy. The fantasy. The beautiful, aching lie we both told ourselves. She squeezed my arm one last time. A silent please. I didn't pull away. But I also didn't speak. And as Michael handed over the keycard, his hand steady and cold, I knew something between all three of us had just shifted. Irrevocably. We didn't go upstairs. Not right away. The keycard sat on the counter between us like a test we both knew we had already failed, or maybe passed, depending on how you looked at it. Michael walked away without another word. Just disappeared through the office door, like all the oxygen in the room left with him. She turned to me slowly, eyes glassy, lips parted like she wanted to speak, but didn't know how to start. I beat her to it. How long? I asked. She blinked. Does it matter? I didn't answer. Because it did. It shouldn't, but it did. Was I a mistake? I asked. Her face broke at that, like I'd struck something deep. She shook her head, fast, almost angry. No, she said. God, no. You were, the only thing that felt real in months. I wanted to believe her. Part of me already did. But the other part, the one that still saw the gold band on her finger and the wreckage in Michael's eyes, couldn't ignore what we'd done. What we were. She stepped closer. You make me feel alive again, she whispered. Like I'm still a woman. Like I'm not invisible. Her hands found mine. Soft, trembling. But I can't run from this anymore, she said. Not with you. Not like this. I looked down at her fingers wrapped around mine. I remembered every moment, every laugh, every almost kiss, every second that shouldn't have happened. So what now? I asked. She smiled through the sadness. The kind of smile that only comes when the truth finally wins. We let go, she said. Not because it wasn't real, but because it was. I didn't cry. Not then. But something inside me cracked open. I nodded. And slowly, carefully, I pulled my hands from hers. The lobby was quiet again. No footsteps. No noise. Just two people who had touched something too sacred, too dangerous, and had the decency to stop before it ruined them completely. She reached into her purse and pulled out the keycard. Set it gently on the counter. I'm going home, she said. To talk to him. Really talk. I gave a small nod. You should. She looked back once as she walked toward the door. And in that look, I saw everything we'd been afraid to say. Every wish. Every regret. She left. And I stood there, in a hotel lobby that still smelled like her perfume, watching the space she used to fill. Knowing we had both loved, and still chose to walk away. Because sometimes, love doesn't demand a happy ending. Just an honest one. It's been 3 weeks. She didn't call. I didn't text. There was no angry fallout, no dramatic goodbye. Just silence, and a strange kind of peace. I saw Michael again. He didn't say much, just handed me my change at the local store and looked past me like I wasn't even there. And I didn't blame him. I still don't. I've thought a lot about that night, the hotel key card, the way her voice trembled, the pain in all three of our eyes. But mostly, I think about how close we came to becoming people we couldn't come back from. I didn't love her because she was someone else's wife. I loved her in spite of that. I loved the way she'd sip her coffee like it was the first taste of warmth in her day. The way she laughed louder than she meant to, and then covered her mouth like a kid. The way she saw me, not as a boy, or a mistake, but as someone she chose. But love isn't always enough. Sometimes, it shows up just to remind us we're still alive, and then leaves us better than it found us. She went back to her husband. Or maybe she left him, I honestly don't know. That part stopped being mine to carry. What I do know is this, that night, when I walked out of that hotel without her, I made a choice. Not because I didn't care. But because I finally did. And that's love, too. Love is the truth you say when it would be easier to lie. It's the goodbye you mean when your heart's still begging you to stay. It's the memory you hold close, even when you know it's not coming back. I still think about her sometimes. Not with regret. Just with gratitude. She woke something up in me I didn't know was sleeping. And though we'll never share a life, we shared a moment. A real one. That's more than most people get. And maybe, someday, I'll find someone who doesn't carry a ring on her hand and 1,000 unspoken things in her eyes. Maybe I'll be someone who doesn't fall for women who are halfway out of love with someone else. But until then, I carry this story like a scar. Quiet, tender, and honest. We were a spark that burned hot, and ended before it became a fire. And I'll always be thankful it didn't burn us alive.